And let's have them start with their name and what they do in the band. And let's start with you.
James Hetfield, rhythm guitar and vocals.
Lars Ulrich, drums and bongs.
Dave Mustaine, lead guitar. Cliff Burton, bass guitar.
Do it loud, do it fast, and do it yourself. That's the nu metal motto of Metallica, a band that after a decade of hard work and sonic enterprise truly rules. The band's story begins back in the spring of 1981. Glam was still king on the LA scene, but Danish-born drummer Lars Ulrich was looking to start a very different sort of band. Fortunately, a singer and guitarist named James Hetfield and his friend Hugh Tanner were looking for a drummer.
We met up with him in a little room. I think it was Irvine, California. And he had this drum kit that was kind of like the Muppet kit, you know? It was not a real kit or something. It had about 10 different colors on it, and he had one cymbal that every time he'd hit it, it would fall over and we'd have to stop.
Nothing came of that initial encounter, but Ulrich did later get an offer to do a track for a metal compilation album. He had no band, but he remembered his meeting with James Hetfield.
Lars had called me back, got a hold of me and said he knew this guy, Brian Slagle, who was putting together this compilation album called Metal Massacre.
Me and James, wrote this song together called Hit the Lights. The review in some of the magazines in Europe said this was the worst sounding song the guy had ever heard. It was the worst recording that this guy had ever heard on an album.
We tried to recruit other guitar players. Our bass player, Ron, who I was living with, was in the band for quite a while. We tried all kinds of different guys, local, from beach bums to Hollywood rockers.
One day, I'm sitting in my house and the phone rings, and this guy just gets on the phone and says, "Hey, I got all this equipment and blah, blah, blah," just motor mouthing off, and I got my own photographer and I got my own driver, and I'm like going, huh? And it turned out this was this guy named Dave Mustaine.
What Metallica actually did was you watched four guys get together, these mad nuclear physicists or whatever, and we kind of spilled some chemicals into a drum, and boom, here you go. Speed metal defined.
With its initial lineup complete, Metallica started clubbing around LA in March of 1982, pounding out covers by such underground British metal bands as Sweet Savage and Blitzkrieg. Then the band whipped up 7 original songs for a demo tape to circulate, the now near-legendary No Life Till Leather.
I would send 5 tapes out, and those 5 guys would, copy them and send them to, 5 other guys, and those 5, it would just spread like wildfire. And within a couple of months, the whole underground around the country and also in Europe just knew about Metallica.
Metallica's first lineup seemed stable, but something was missing, and Ulrich and Hetfield realized what it was when they caught a band called Trauma at the Whiskey in Los Angeles one night and were knocked out by the group's bassist, Cliff Burton.
He just had this stage presence and this visual thing about him that was just incredible.
We couldn't tell what he was playing, but we looked a little closer and it was the bass guitar, and he had these wild noises coming out of it, and his head wouldn't stop. It was on a swivel, We pretty much knew he was our kind of guy.
After 3 months of wooing and the band's agreement to move up to San Francisco, Cliff Burton agreed to become Metallica's new bassist. Soon after, the group got a phone call from New York from a man named John Zazula, or Johnny Z. He'd heard their tape, and he wanted them to relocate to the East Coast and record for a new label he was starting called Megaforce.
We hopped in this U-Haul with all the gear. We were sleeping in the back on the way, drove straight there. We kind of found out on the road how Dave was, which was he had a few drinks and got a little out of control, towards our friends and us, which was not gonna work. We were, real into the family kind of vibe, and if it wasn't, we didn't need anything screwing it up. So the first thing when we met Johnny Z was, "Hi, we're here. You want to get rid of our guitar player?"
My feelings were hurt, and, I still think of them all the time. It's been kind of hard for me getting to the point where I can accept all of that because, there was a lot of jealousy and a lot of me dealing with what was going on in my head, watching these guys achieve this stellar position in the industry that I'm still working in.
The decision to dump Dave Mustaine from the Metallica lineup immediately created a major problem, finding a wildly talented replacement. Fortunately, the band was already aware of another San Francisco Bay Area band called Exodus and its remarkable guitarist, Kirk Hammett.
I was in the band almost instantly, and a week later we were gigging all over the place and living this this subterranean lifestyle.
We had to live in this, it was called the Music Building. It was in Jamaica, Queens. Other bands would come in and rehearse there and go home, you know, and sleep in a nice little bed. And you weren't even supposed to, you know, be there past midnight or whatever. But we knew all the people there. We were sleeping on, you know, the corners and the, you know, packing material, how our amps got there, you know.
The band in the next room over was Anthrax. And they felt sorry for us. So they gave us a toaster oven and a refrigerator.
That whole thing that happens to you when you, for the first time, stand there and like actually like hold your own album, you know, and Metallica, and see your picture and songs that you've been playing for a couple of years, and I mean, that was a very heavy thing.
After their Kill 'Em All for One tour, the band considered hiring Armored Saint singer John Bush to be Metallica's frontman, freeing James Hetfield to concentrate on his guitar playing. Bush declined, however, and so Metallica pressed on, starting work on the album that would elevate the band to a new creative level, Ride the Lightning.
I think it showed all our fans and so on that we were not the kind of band that I think was going to be in the pile of predictable bands, and that hopefully we set the tone for the rest of the 80s.
We're not trying to be something big and fancy, you know, it's just us doing what we do, and to keep it that way.
Bring the music more across instead of the look. Not try and hide anything.
In March of 1985, with virtually no radio airplay, Metallica's Ride the Lightning album peaked at number 100 on the Billboard chart, an astonishing accomplishment given the lack of industry support. Encouraged and more determined than ever, the band parted ways with Johnny Z and his Megaforce label, hired new management, and signed with a major U.S. company, Elektra Records. Metallica spent the second half of the year in Denmark recording a third album called Master of Puppets.
At that time, we were just getting out of that mode of, you know, listening to nothing but, you know, the most extreme music there was.
Try to create a little more mood swings into things, incorporate more acoustic work to, you know, make the heavier stuff and heavier, you know, dynamics and things like that we started learning. Harmonies, which Cliff was really good at. He took music theory. He was basically teaching, at least myself, a lot about harmonies and how, you know, how they intertwine, how they work together.
You all know Cliff Burton over here?
When we heard we got the Aussie tour, it was like, ooh, you know, here we are, this is it. Things are going real well. 55 minutes, you know, all our stage set up. It's real cool. We'd get up and at sound check, we'd be doing, you know, old Black Sabbath songs, and, you know, God, maybe tomorrow he'll get up and sing with us or something, you know.
Things were rolling along. I mean, Master of Puppets went like top 30 album, and the Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning like re-entered Billboard charts, and we had like all three albums on at the same time, and there was a lot of things going on.
The Ozzy Osbourne tour was a career peak for Metallica, and when the band decided to take a break from it to play some headlining dates in Europe, the members weren't expecting to suddenly go crashing down to rock bottom. But on September 26, 1986, tragedy struck.
I couldn't sleep on the bus in this top bunk. It was too drafty, and my throat, you know, was getting screwed up, so I'd always go sleep in the back lounge.
We couldn't get it all together. We were arguing with each other and saying, well, you know, I want your bunk, well, I want your bunk, blah, blah, blah. I've never told anyone this, by the way. But our manager said, well, why don't we just draw cards? We said, sure. So we shuffled the cards, said highest card gets first choice of bunks. So, you know, I reached for a card, and I picked two of hearts. Cliff reaches for a card, and he gets ace of spades. You know, James gets a card, and Lars gets a card. So Cliff has first choice of bunks. So he says, I want your bunk, Kirk. I go, fine, you know. So he gets my bunk. I end up with a bunk in the front of the bus, which was, like, not as good. And that night the accident happened, and it was a horrible thing because, you know, Cliff was in my former bunk. What happened that night was that the driver supposedly hit a patch of ice, and the bus skidded. It shattered the windows, and Cliff got thrown out of the bus, and the bus landed on top of him. And when it actually happened, I got thrown out of my bunk and knocked unconscious for like 3 or 4 seconds. And when I came to, I heard everyone screaming, but I didn't hear Cliff. And I instantly knew something was wrong because I didn't hear him. And I got out of the top of the bus, because there's an emergency hatch at the very top of the bus. And I turned around and there was Cliff. And I just said, oh my God. And I walked away, and I was in absolute shock. And I was delirious. I was in shock. I was hysterical. Everyone was screaming and crying.
It was too unreal to just deal with. It was like, you know, this doctor came into the room that I was in the hospital and told me that our bass player had died, and it was just too unreal.
Just I remember our tour manager at the time, Bobby Schneider, said, you know, after everyone was kind of taken care of there, he said, you know, let's get the band and go to the hotel. And he said, you know, when he said band, it was like, it's not really a band right now. And we couldn't really grasp it for a while.
We had to sit down and actually face this. You know, what were we going to do? We realized that the last thing that Cliff would obviously want us to do, and we couldn't stop now. There was, you know, Metallica had always been about going against whatever would come our way and just sort of carrying on.
We weren't really looking for a Cliff Part 2. You know, someone who could, like, solo a lot, and someone who was really eccentric like he was in his own way.
They'd come in with their bass, and they'd plug in and start fiddling around, and you knew right away. It's like, ugh. We had the little signal, you know, that we'd, you know, it was like, see ya. You know, you could tell if, you know, he started going, bap, 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 you know, doing this funky stuff. It's like, wait a minute, you know, next.
One day, this kid named Jason Newsted just walked in, and it was pretty obvious that there was something about him that was pretty different.
It wasn't just about playing bass. There's so much more to it, and those guys knew it, and I knew it.
Deciding immediately that the band had to go on, the surviving members of Metallica set their sights on a new bassist, Jason Newsted, from a band called Flotsam and Jetsam. They chose their local hangout, Tommy's Joint, to tell him the good news.
But I guess that was part of the test, too, is to see if I could kind of hang and have, you know, beers and keep myself together.
So me, James, and Kirk kind of ended up meeting in the bathroom up here, and we were standing there relieving ourselves and basically looked at each other and said, is that the guy? And we just kind of all just, you know, nodded and said, yeah, that's him. We came back, sat down around this very table.
Lars said, so do you want a job? When I said, yeah, and I just got a little nutty and started screaming a little bit, you know.
I just basically looked at him and I said, hey man, want a job? And this is what he did. Scared everybody out of the establishment.
and then we thought twice about this.
I knew there was going to be tests, and I knew that people were going to be messing with me here, messing with me there, trying to figure out if I was going to be the right guy for the job. And that's certainly what happened. And it came from all ends, you know. It came from crew guys and friends and family and whatever. But stuck it out, and here we are 6 years later.
Keep the home fires burning.
7 days after Jason Newsted officially became Metallica's new bassist, the band embarked on its first tour of Japan. Next came an EP of cover tunes, Garage Days Revisited, and then the group started work on its next album, And Justice for All, a collection of very extended tracks that would eventually become Metallica's first top 10 hit and spawn its first music video.
It is impossible for a decelebrated individual to experience pain, pleasure, memory, dreams, or thought of any kind. This young man will be as unfeeling, as unthinking as the dead until the day he joins them.
We really realized that you could use the medium of video to do your, a creative thing just as much as records or anything else. And right then I knew that we definitely entered into the video age just like everybody else had 10 years before us. I remember now you're supposed to put makeup on, and James ran in the other direction and stuff like that. It was hilarious.
Taking my sight, taking my speech, taking my head, taking my arm, taking my legs, taking my soul, and then with life in
And Justice for All was nominated for a Grammy Award, and Metallica itself became the first metal band to play at the awards show. Unfortunately, in a now notorious incident, the group lost the Best Metal Band award to Jethro Tull of all acts. The band soldiered on, though, winding up a tour, taking a 9-month break, and then starting work on a collection of surprisingly shorter songs produced by hard rock veteran Bob Rock that would become the biggest Metallica album to date.
We're taking those 10-minute mini epics and that whole progressive side just about as far as it could go.
Concentrated more on just one riff through the whole song, which was just as challenging instead of trying to jam 100 riffs into one song.
The first song that we wrote was Enter Sandman, and it was that really set the kind of tone and the chorus for the new album, because it did prove to us that for the first time we could actually write a short song, a simple song.
Even the packaging of the album is a bit more simplistic. It's none more black.
Yeah. Here it is, guys.
You saw it here first, huh?
None more.
Exciting, huh?
I think we've reached a different level now with this record, definitely. It just shows that Metallica has more to offer than just going fast all the time and, 240 beats every song and just blasting your brains out.
I really wanted to come in as a drummer and try and really lay back and get some kind of a groove thing happening.
It's crazy, I know. The rhythm section of Metallica is crazy because Lars has always played with just the guitar. Never had any bass coming through his monitor or anything. So on this album, we figured out that the drums and the bass need to play together. Boom, boom, chick, boom, 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 chick, to lay down a cool foundation for a song.
I'm not trying to play 10,000 notes crammed into 4 bars or anything like that. I'm trying to get a bit bluesier.
Singing-wise, had to sing on this one instead of just yelling in key.
Something's wrong, something like there be thoughts tonight, and the honest away. Dreams of war, dreams of lies, dreams of dragons fire, and the things that will fade.
Metallica unveiled its unusual new album at a special listening party for fans at New York's Madison Square Garden. The record went straight to #1 in this country and topped the charts in 14 others as well. It also got the band invited back to the annual Grammy Awards show, and this time they didn't go home empty-handed.
I want to thank all the radio stations and MTV, without whom all this was possible anyway. Whoa! Just kidding, guys, just kidding.
People are opening their eyes. They were afraid, I think, before, and now they have to deal with it no matter what.
We're basically a live band, and we we enjoy playing live, and we enjoy being able to put on a great show. I mean, that really means a lot to us.
See, this pretty much says it all. Heaven and hell. Up there, you go to become a rock god.
I will, absolutely. Hey, Hampton, how you feeling tonight? Okay? GA, man. GA, you know what that means, don't you? Yeah. Go away from me.
You'll be out very soon, so ready to kick some ass here? We'll be out in 2 minutes. 3, 4.
Once the lights go down and the intro music starts, there's no kind of really reality. It's all just bzzz.
The fans know the integrity is there. They've put us where we are, you know, whether we like it or not.
Metallica, it's my life, and I could not ever picture doing this with anybody else or another band name. And I think that the day Metallica sits down and says, okay, you know, no more, let's give this a respectful ending, I'm just going to do something else.
I mean, it changed everything in my life, of course, you know. It was like, it was a dream for me to be able to even get into this band. So, I mean, it means everything. It means everything.
It means a lot to me to know that I haven't sold my soul to do it either. You know, I've stuck to what I've believed in, as well as, you know, the other 3 guys, and we've done it in a very honest way.
There's no doubt that we've grown up as a family in the band and learned a lot of things from each other and together. And there's no way I would change it for anything.
Did we start something new? Have somebody else answer that, but maybe we really did.
I'm gonna move to the country and eat a bunch of peaches.
What?
Something like that, just like 10 times in a row. We just sang that the whole time.
Who did?
There's some guy on the radio and a song.
And there's more assholes on the radio these days. It's amazing, man. I turn on the radio and I feel like just shooting it. I think they're just trying to be clever, but it's just really, really backfires. It's really stupid.
I love a few years ago. Whoa.
I know. That was really stupid. Stuff like that does not age well.
I think a lot of bands, without knowing it, kind of dig themselves too much of a rut. They're just a little afraid to expand or to take a step forward. I don't think we've ever been afraid of that.
There's a certain dynamic between the four of us that seems to like keep the spark alive.
The thing that has kept Metallica going so long, and it's kind of been our secret. I mean, it's how, you know, everybody always wants to be there for the other three guys. Nobody ever wants to let the other three guys down.
We get older, and that's okay. We change, and that's okay, as long as it's natural.
Metallica has always been the thinking dudes metal band, punky but intricate too. Early Metallica tracks, in fact, were so fiendishly multi-metered the guys themselves could barely keep up in concert. But that's history.
This song's real raw in terms of it just has like two guitars, drums and bass, a couple of vocal effects and stuff like that.
Whereas the rest of the album ranges over many stylistic strategies, right?
Stylistic strategies, I like that one. That's a pretty good one.
Well put there.
It's like
in other words, it's a complete mess.
3, 4.
With its last album still on the Billboard Top 100 chart 5 years after its release, Metallica has stripped its surefire sound way down for an unusual new album called Load.
There was no big plan in the end on how they were all supposed to sound, so we just concentrated song by song and just let them go.
Every song evokes a certain type of mood. It's not, you know, consistently just like pounding heavy metal thunder all the way.
James, Kerr.
Now even at me? Oh man, this is an old band. We're taking precedent here. Lars is listening to all of us at once.
I think the one thing we had to do was just be looser, be more, go for attitude, go for vibe, and go for something that was more of a band sound. I think listening to some of the earlier records, it definitely sounds like the Ulrich Hetfield experience.
The Hetfield-Ulrich experience began in Los Angeles in 1981, a time when glam was king, or queen, and two young locals found themselves united in dismay, angry young singer James Hetfield and transplanted Danish drummer Lars Ulrich.
I came from Europe. I was listening to a lot of the European stuff that was going on at the time. I landed in the land of REO Speedwagon and Styx and Kansas, and I'm just going like, ah!
We loved punk music, and it just didn't have enough musicianship to it, so we basically added some.
Hetfield and Ulrich hooked up with Dave Mustaine, a speed demon guitarist with a major mouth, and brought in bassist Ron McGovney to form the maiden lineup of Metallica in October 1981.
People came to our gigs not knowing what they were expecting. They'd come to that club no matter what, just to hang with their friends and see who's, you know, looking prettier, you know, that night. And we got very annoyed with that, and we'd sing louder and play faster, and that's kind of how I think it helped develop our style.
So Metallica was working, but something was lacking in the band's lineup, and while watching another group at the famous Whiskey one night, they discovered what it was: bassist Cliff Burton.
So we saw this big mop going, and, you know, we had this wah going, and, you know, fingers and hair were flying, and we just thought that was so cool and so unique, and we had to have the guy.
He really had been studying music at a college up in San Francisco and stuff, and really started introducing James and me to things like harmonies and melodies and stuff like that.
My name is Donna Davis, and I'm here with Metallica, the hot new heavy metal band from LA. And let's have them start with their name and what they do in the band. And let's start with you.
James Hetfield, rhythm guitar and vocals.
Lars Ulrich, drums and function.
Dave Mustaine, lead guitar. Cliff Burton, bass guitar.
By this point, Dave Mustaine's enthusiasm for cocktails was driving his bandmates nuts. So after securing a record deal and heading for New York to make their first album with metal promoter Johnny Z, they decided to take action.
As soon as we got to New York, it's like, hi, Johnny Z, or, you know, we're Metallica, and what kind of sack, our lead guitar player? Whoa, you know.
In giving Dave Mustaine the axe, Hetfield and Ulrich were, shall we say, unhampered by sentiment.
We had booked him a bus ticket like 10 in the morning, and like at 9:15 or something, it's like, Dave, wake up, we gotta talk. And So basically, we woke him up, and he was still sort of rubbing, sleep out of his eyes. Babe, you gotta go home. And then
and you gotta go on a bus.
Well, yeah, Dave, you gotta go home. And then the infamous, this lingers. This is like famous. This question. He goes, when does my plane leave? And Dave, well, here's part 2 of the bad news. So basically, you just got fired, and you have 4 days on a Greyhound bus clear across America to sit and revel in that.
I initially got the call on April Fool's Day, so that was an April Fool's Day joke. I was on the can.
About midnight, Kirk shows up, and he sets up his equipment.
This is actually the first time I'd ever been out of California.
Really?
Yeah. I was scared of this. And it's like New York. It's like, wow, this place is really big and dirty.
The first song we played was Seek and Destroy, and we got to the guitar solo, and 10 seconds into it, me and James just looked at each other, and that was it. Done. End of story.
Records. It's called Kill 'Em All.
What? What's everyone looking at?
It's all down to him if we're going to know.
Lyrics are the bottleneck of the whole
We
album.
just know it's something really cool.
On the way to somewhere is always the best time you can come up with lyrics. So, like a paper right there ready to write away, and little pen handy right there. Going back and forth to Lars's and I'd be late going there. Stop at Wendy's. I'd be eating a burger, talking on the phone, and writing down lyrics.
What's on your mind writing-wise these days? What are the themes of some of these songs?
Themes lyrically?
Yeah.
Vagueness. I don't want to really give any preconceptions, but it's more deep, personal stuff. It's. I had to kind of go visit some kind of messed up places within where I thought, well, I'm all better now. I don't have to write that kind of crap anymore. But I mean, once you're messed up, you're, you know.
So tell me open, pour me out. The things inside that scream and shout. So hold me until
A lot of those old records were so thematic, and there was all these visuals and all these major, almost, just messages and all this kind of heavy-duty political stuff, and we really got kind of bored with that. And I think at the same time, James felt more comfortable opening up and letting some of his really innermost bizarre stuff out.
I just wish that people would just like go past, what they think Metallica is about, heavy metal, thunder and lightning, Satan, and listen to the music.
There was always in harder rock kind of a thing about you could never stray. We've always strayed and all over the place.
Metallica started straying on its second album, Ride the Lightning. The band had signed with new management and a new major label, and it wasn't about to start bowing down before the usual hard and fast metal stereotypes.
In 1984, when we put a ballad, Fade to Black, on our second record, people were freaking, okay? And we just said, right there, this is how it's going to be. There are no parameters that keep us in.
Releasing its third album, Master of Puppets, in 1986, Metallica embarked on a career-changing tour with metal god Ozzy Osbourne. The Puppets album rose to number 29 on the Billboard chart, and with this success, the band soon found itself answering to the inevitable charge of selling out.
We do what we want to do, If they consider that selling out, then whatever.
Metallica's success was unique in that rock radio gave the group zip in the way of airplay.
Radio didn't want us, and it was, we kept, sending them tapes.
As for the hot new promotional medium of music video, well, Metallica dismissed it as lame.
Oh, you had these guys playing, and then they'd have all these girls in bikinis, prancing all around. That became like a rock standard for a while, and we didn't want anything to do with that.
Metallica was also fighting the popular image of metal itself, of a dark cult genre devoted to death and Satanism, music for losers.
You say one more thing about Metallica, I'm gonna slam you in the nail.
Yeah. Go on with your bad self, Beavis.
As with many stereotypes, this one was highly misleading, as is demonstrated in the recent film Paradise Lost, the true story of 3 Arkansas metal fans accused of ritually murdering 3 young boys.
Initially, we wanted to look at this case because it was about 3 teenagers who listened to heavy metal music, who wore black, who were into satanic ritual, who allegedly had killed these 3 kids. As we started uncovering the layers, we realized that the kids, in fact, may be innocent, and that the fact that they listened to heavy metal music down in a Bible-thumping area of the country made them automatic targets for a police department that was under a lot of pressure to solve the crime.
Anything wrong with wearing black in and of itself? No. Anything wrong with the heavy metal stuff in and of itself? No. The Book of Shadows, anything wrong with that in and of itself? No. But when you look at it together and you begin to see inside Damien Eccles, you see inside that person, and you look inside there and there's not a soul in there.
Impressed by the thrust of Paradise Lost, Metallica for the first time allowed its music to be used in a movie. After all, the band itself, while famously close to its fans, had been accused of encouraging teen suicide with its ballad Fade to Black, even though many young listeners said the song had helped them through dark times.
I have lost the will to live, simply nothing more to give.
Once you start worrying about what other people are going to do if you do something, and what ifs, all these what ifs start to, they mess with you inside, and you can't really be honest with yourself. So it's not a great thing when it happens, but I don't know if we're the cause of it.
A ton of bad luck struck Metallica itself on September 27, 1986. While touring Europe, the band's bus skidded off an icy road, and bassist Cliff Burton was killed.
Did the band think at any time like maybe we should take 6 months off?
No. We knew that if we did that, we'd probably start wallowing in our grief and depression. So we unanimously decided that we should just keep on working.
Double-edged sword of that was that it was like whoever we got in the band would be at the receiving end of torment and torture and for years to come, just because he was the replacement for Cliff.
That lucky man turned out to be Metallica fan Jason Newsted, plucked from the lineup of a Phoenix band called Flotsam and Jetsam.
Hey, let's go. Just because he was in the mix, now he thinks we have to wait for him. Okay, guys.
Looking back on it, the first couple of years were rough. Actually, the first couple of years were pretty rough.
When they wanted to be ugly, they were ugly and didn't really, that was just that.
You didn't beat him up or anything, did you?
No, we didn't beat him up. Well, mentally we beat him up. But, I mean, come on, he walked off the street into a dream situation, so we had to let him know that it's not this easy, brother.
I had to really keep a straight head professional. I really had to see further, I had to look beyond all these kind of things, these bumps and these curves and obstacles. I really had to look beyond that. There were a lot of them in the beginning.
It's come a long way, and I think in a bizarre way, this is the most we've ever been a band right now.
What is democracy?
Got something to do with young men killing each other, I think.
In 1988, Metallica released a new album, And Justice for All, mounted a worldwide tour, and finally came up with a video concept they liked. The story of a young man who goes off to war and comes back a vegetable.
I can remember sitting on the couch and one would come on, and then afterwards the DJ would say, well, on a lighter note, we have... and I knew we had touched a chord.
And Justice for All was nominated for a Grammy Award, although it famously lost out to Jethro Tull of all acts. But the critical tide was turning, as even New York Times writers began hailing Metallica's complex arrangements and pointed lyrics.
Hey, look. We're in Rolling Stone, isn't that exciting? See? We made it into Rolling Stone. We peaked. Can only go down from here.
1990, gearing up to record its 5th album, Metallica finally found a producer the band would come to value highly. Veteran studio whiz Bob Rock.
One of the first things Bob Rock ever said to me when I met him 5 or 6 years ago in Vancouver was, you guys have never made a record that sounds like you sound when you play live.
Let's don't do a yeah at the end. Do something else. Woman. Right? Okay. Child. Fire woman.
Something's wrong, something like heavy thoughts tonight, ain't the honest way.
I think we kind of all fessed up to the fact that we just needed to bring somebody else into our tightly knit organization and work with us in the studio.
The typical Bob Rock scenario is me showing up and playing guitar, him looking at me and saying, "Come on, man." And I'll look at him and say, "What?" And he goes, "You're much better than that. Come on. You don't want to put that on an album."
Remember what I said about guitar players that don't do their homework? Remember, just remember that.
Hey, man, I do my homework. I do, man. It just doesn't work.
The resulting record, officially called Metallica, unofficially the Black Album, was unveiled at a fan listening party at New York's Madison Square Garden. And it was a smash, going to #1 and finally winning a Grammy Award for Best Metal Album.
Let's see, I think the first thing we got to do is, obviously, like you guys were expecting, we got to thank Jethro Tull for not putting out an album this year, right?
I knew we had a really good record, and I knew that it was going to do well. I would never in a zillion years think that 5 years later it's still hovering in the top 100 and selling, you know, whatever X thousand copies of. I mean, who just bought the Black Album last week?
The longevity, that's cooler to me than being on top for 5 minutes, really hanging out and still being relevant, and for some reason people are still buying the damn thing.
The unending popularity of the Black Album wound up keeping Metallica on the road for 2 whole grueling years.
Hey, I'm your life, I'm no one who takes you there. Hey, I'm your life, I'm no one who cares.
If you at gunpoint forced me to name one gig that stands out, I'd probably say the gig we did in Moscow in 1991. This was just elevated one step more than anything I've ever seen of us, and working with an audience, and it was that whole experience was truly amazing.
After cranking out some 400 shows, the members of Metallica decided to take a whole year apart from each other before starting work on Load.
The sound on this record seems to indicate sort of a happier group. I don't know, do you feel happier than you were 15 years ago?
I don't know about happier.
Less unhappy.
Maybe.
Has the songwriting process changed?
The actual songwriting process hasn't changed that much. It's still me and James who sit with the material. It's still me and James who put the songs together, the basic arrangements, everything like that. I think this time around we ended up using more stuff of Kirk's.
And all the whitehead stones and rose like Georgia cotton.
Let's play Guess Who's Not in the Room.
Bob!
Producer Bob Rock was back on board for Load, of course, and Metallica itself was a changed band, rested, mature, and operating now with a new, more democratic spirit.
It's like a band, you know? It's very weird, you know? Yeah, Lars and I back off a little and let them take a little control, you know, over their own, you know, parts.
They kind of let down the guard a little bit and maybe let a little bit more responsibility go to the other cats in the band, Kirk and myself, and let us be able to, you know, voice our opinions and really show our stuff this time.
I mean, we're really doing everything backwards. Do you know what? I mean, most people they start as a band and then a couple guys take over and then everybody blows up. But we kind of you know, started with a couple of guys running the show, and then it becomes a band, and now it's like a tighter thing than it's ever been before. It's kind of weird.
Not only is Load a major stylistic step for Metallica, but so is the band's choice of a venue to promote it as headliners on the earnestly alternative Lollapalooza tour.
We're going to reach a lot of folks that we didn't before and gain some respect from some people that we didn't before. And we're real happy with the songs. We're real proud of them. And that's going to make a big dent in a lot of people that maybe had their doubts, and that makes me happy too.
Musically, I think we're in a position right now where we could go anywhere and people would not necessarily maybe like it, but at least respect it. And I think that that's important. And at least understand that we have a desire to keep pushing the boundaries, and the only thing that will limit us will be our own imaginations.